beneath the ancient city of Prague, where cobblestones whisper the secrets of centuries. Cryptographer Elena Novak descends into the forgotten archives, unaware that what she is about to uncover will change history itself. A single cipher, hidden for hundreds of years, lies waiting in the shadows, a key to a conspiracy that has shaped empires, silenced scholars, and killed to remain buried. But as symbols turn to warnings and allies become suspects, Elena realizes that decoding the past may cost her everything, even her life. The cold stone steps of the archive spiraled downward into darkness as Elena Novak adjusted the strap of her satchel and took a slow breath. The muffled sounds of the modern city above faded with each step, replaced by the damp scent of earth and the faint mustiness of forgotten history. Her boots echoed softly against the uneven cobblestones. The narrow corridor ahead, dimly illuminated by a flickering overhead light that struggled against decades of neglect. She reached the heavy iron door that marked the entrance to the secret archives beneath Prague, a place few had ever seen and even fewer had permission to enter. With a careful hand, Elena produced the worn key given to her by Martin Dvorak, the archivist who guarded this subterranean labyrinth. The lock creaked in protest as she turned it, the door swinging inward with a groan that seemed to awaken the silence. Inside, rows upon rows of ancient shelves stretched into the shadows, laden with dusty tomes, brittle scrolls, and countless leather-bound volumes whose contents had been whispered about in academic circles but never fully revealed. Elena's eyes adjusted to the gloom as she switched on her flashlight, the beam cutting through centuries of dust motes dancing in the stale air. Martin was waiting by a cluttered wooden table, his wire-rimmed glasses perched on his nose as he leafed through a ledger. "Elena," he said, his voice low and steady, "I thought you might be interested in this." He reached beneath the table and produced a small, leather-bound manuscript, its cover embossed with faded, cryptic symbols. Elena took it reverently, the weight of the object heavier than expected. "Where did this come from?" she asked, eyes scanning the aged parchment. "Discovered during a recent excavation beneath the old city hall," Martin explained. "No one has been able to decipher it. It's been locked away here for decades, awaiting someone with the right skills." She nodded, a flicker of excitement igniting in her chest. "Then it's my job now." Settling at the table, Elena carefully opened the manuscript. The pages were yellowed and fragile, the ink faded but still legible. Swirling ciphers and strange glyphs decorated the margins, interspersed with what appeared to be archaic Latin phrases. Her fingers traced the patterns, recognizing the complexity of the code, a puzzle centuries in the making. Hours passed unnoticed as she worked, the outside world slipping away. The deeper she delved, the more the manuscript seemed to whisper secrets of a clandestine order, a medieval cult whose influence, the text suggested, had persisted into modern times, woven into the fabric of political power. A sudden creak echoed from the far end of the archives, pulling Elena from her reverie. She glanced up, heart pounding, scanning the dim corridors for movement. Silence answered. Was it merely the building settling, or had someone else descended into this underworld? Shaking off the unease, Elena returned to the manuscript. Her mind raced with possibilities. If the clues were true, this cipher was not just an academic curiosity. It was a key to a hidden history that could rewrite everything she thought she knew about power and secrecy. The night wore on, and with each line decoded, the shadows deepened. Outside, the city of Prague slept unaware of the storm that had quietly begun beneath its cobblestones. As dawn approached, Elena leaned back, exhausted but exhilarated. Her eyes burned from the flickering lamplight, but her resolve was unshaken. This was only the beginning. Somewhere in these ancient codes lay a truth that someone desperately wanted to keep buried, and now Elena Novak was the only one who could bring it to light. But as the first rays of morning sun filtered through the narrow window, casting long shadows across the archives, an unseen watcher took note of her presence, setting in motion a chain of events that would plunge her into a world of secrets, betrayal, and danger beyond anything she had imagined. The Cipher's discovery was not just a revelation, it was a summons to a battle fought in silence and shadows, where knowledge was the deadliest weapon of all. The cavernous space beneath the city of Prague was cloaked in shadows, the air thick with the scent of old parchment and damp stone. Elena Novak sat hunched over a weathered wooden table, the soft glow of a single lamp illuminating the yellowed manuscript that lay before her. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, strands clinging to her damp forehead as she leaned closer, eyes sharp and intent. The silence around her was punctuated only by the faint scratching of her pen and the occasional distant drip of water echoing through the labyrinthine archives. Each symbol on the manuscript was a puzzle piece, woven into a tapestry of cryptic codes that Elena had spent years studying, but this was unlike anything she had encountered before. The script was archaic, layered with an intricate cipher that hinted at knowledge centuries old. Her fingers traced the looping glyphs, mapping their patterns, as she whispered the old code-breaking mantra her mentor had once taught her. Every code has a key. Every key unlocks a truth. Elena paused, her breath catching as the pieces began to fall into place. The first segment of the manuscript revealed names and dates that bore uncanny resemblance to recent political upheavals. References to shadowy councils, clandestine meetings held in forgotten chambers, and veiled threats masked in allegory. Her pulse quickened. This was no mere historical curiosity. It was a message, a warning perhaps, from centuries past, echoing into the present. The words on the page seemed to reach out, pulling her deeper into a labyrinth not just of stone and parchment, but of secrets and danger. She jotted down notes feverishly, the thrill of discovery mingling with a creeping unease that gnawed at her resolve. Suddenly, a faint noise broke the stillness, the soft creak of footsteps echoing down a distant corridor. Elena froze, every muscle tensed, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. She was not alone. The silence returned, but the unease remained, a chilling reminder that in this game of shadows, eyes were always watching. Her mind raced. Was it a guard, a rival scholar, or something more sinister? The manuscript's warnings seemed to bleed into her reality. The conspiracy hinted at on these fragile pages was no longer an academic pursuit. It was a dangerous truth that someone wanted to keep buried, determined not to be intimidated. Elena returned to her cipher wheel, a device she had crafted herself, worn smooth from years of use. Slowly, she rotated its dials, aligning letters and numbers until a hidden message emerged. A phrase that sent a shiver down her spine. The Watchers guard the throne of lies. The weight of the words settled heavily on her shoulders. The manuscript was a map, and she had just uncovered the first key. But with knowledge came risk, and Elena knew that her every move was now under scrutiny. As the night deepened, Elena's thoughts swirled. The shadows clung tighter, and the line between friend and foe blurred. Yet, amidst the growing paranoia, her determination burned brighter. She would follow the cipher wherever it led, even if it meant walking into the heart of darkness itself. The air in the subterranean archives was thick with the scent of dust and ancient paper, the dim lighting casting long shadows across towering shelves laden with leather-bound volumes. Elena Novak adjusted the strap of her satchel, the weight of her recent discoveries pressing heavily on her mind. The cold stone walls seemed to close in with every step. She had been here before, but today was different. Today, she was not alone. A soft shuffle echoed from the far end of the chamber, and Elena's sharp eyes caught the movement before the figure emerged from the shadows. Martin Dvorak, the archivist whose reputation preceded him, stepped into the faint glow of the overhead lamp. His wiry frame seemed almost spectral in the low light, glasses perched precariously on the bridge of his nose. "I wasn't expecting you so soon," Martin said, his voice low and measured, yet carrying an undercurrent of cautious welcome. Elena nodded, forcing a smile she didn't quite feel. "The manuscript I found. It's unlike anything I've seen. I need access to deeper records, the ones not available to the public." Martin's eyes narrowed thoughtfully. "That's a dangerous path, Miss Novak. The archives you're asking about are restricted for a reason." "Then it's all the more reason to look," Elena replied firmly. "These aren't just old codes and forgotten texts. There's something more, something that ties the past to the present in ways I can't yet explain." He studied her for a long moment before nodding slowly. "Very well, follow me." The archivist led her through a narrow passageway concealed behind a false wall, the air growing cooler and heavier the deeper they ventured. The faint metallic scent of old iron filled the air as Martin produced a heavy key, its teeth worn smooth from years of use. The lock clicked open with a resonant clang, and Martin pushed open a thick iron door. Inside, rows of ancient manuscripts and scrolls rested on shelves carved directly from the stone walls. Faint glyphs and cryptic symbols seemed to shimmer in the flickering light of a solitary oil lamp. Elena's breath caught as she stepped into the vault, feeling as if she had entered a sanctum where time itself was held captive. "These documents," Martin whispered, "are the keepers of Prague's darkest secrets. The cult you're investigating, their shadow stretches longer than most suspect." Elena approached a fragile folio, carefully opening it to reveal pages dense with encoded marginalia. Her fingers traced the faded ink, decoding fragments that hinted at rituals and allegiances spanning centuries. Each deciphered word wove a tighter web of intrigue, binding the medieval cult to the present day's political undercurrents. Hours slipped by unnoticed as Elena lost herself in the texts. The labyrinth outside seemed a distant echo, but an oppressive weight settled over her. The silence was punctuated only by the soft scratch of her pen as she made notes and the occasional creak of old wood. Suddenly, a faint noise reverberated from the corridor, a subtle shift, like a whisper in the dark. Elena and Martin exchanged a glance, their silent communication loaded with unspoken warnings. The flickering lamp cast distorted shadows that danced menacingly along the walls, and an icy chill crept into the room. "We're not alone," Martin murmured. Elena's heart pounded as the sensation of unseen eyes watching them grew stronger. Every instinct screamed caution, yet the promise of the truth held her rooted in place. The shadows in the archives were no longer just relics of the past. They were alive with danger and deceit. "We have to move carefully," Elena said, her voice steady despite the racing of her pulse. "If they know what we've found, there's no telling what they'll do to stop us." Martin nodded grimly, pulling the iron door closed behind them. The heavy lock sealed their sanctuary, but also felt like a barrier against a world increasingly hostile and uncertain. Emerging back into the wider corridors, Elena's thoughts swirled with the revelations from the manuscripts. The cult's enduring presence beneath Prague was no myth, and its tendrils were far more entrenched than she had feared. Every step forward was a step deeper into a labyrinth of secrets where trust was scarce and betrayal lurked in every shadow. Her journey was only beginning, but already the stakes had never been higher. In the city of 100 spires, the past and present collided beneath the surface, and Elena Novak was at the heart of the storm. The low hum of the city filtered down through the narrow streets of Prague as Elena Novak stepped cautiously into the shadowed entrance of the underground cafe. The faint scent of damp stone and old wood mingled with the sharp aroma of freshly brewed coffee, grounding her in the moment despite the storm of thoughts swirling in her mind. She pulled her dark coat tighter around her, the fabric damp from the evening drizzle that had begun moments ago. The cafe was tucked beneath the bustling streets, a haven for those who sought refuge from the glaring daylight and prying eyes above. Its walls were lined with faded photographs and shelves of dog-eared books, the air thick with whispered secrets and quiet conversations. Elena chose a secluded corner, her sharp eyes scanning the room as she settled into the cracked leather seat, her fingers drumming nervously on the tabletop. Minutes later, the door creaked open, and a figure entered with purposeful strides. Jakub Mareka, name she had heard in whispered circles, a man cloaked in shadows and half-truths. His rugged appearance was softened only slightly by the tired lines etched across his face, evidence of years spent navigating the treacherous world of intelligence. His eyes, always alert, flicked around the room before landing on her. Without a word, he slid into the seat opposite her. "You're late," Elena said, her voice steady but edged with suspicion. Jakub smirked, a flash of dry humor cutting through the tension. "In my line of work, timing is everything. Besides, I wanted to make sure no one was watching." She studied him carefully. Trust was a luxury Elena could ill afford, especially when the labyrinthian conspiracy she was unraveling had already claimed so many lives. Yet, here was a man offering help, tactical support, and perhaps a lifeline. "What do you want?" she asked. Jakub leaned forward, producing a slim tablet from his coat. The screen flickered to life, casting a pale blue glow over his face. He swiped through intercepted communications, cryptic messages linking powerful government figures to shadowy cults. "I've been tracking these for months," he explained. "When I heard about your work in the archives, I realized we might be chasing the same ghosts." Elena's eyes narrowed as she absorbed the information. The depth of the conspiracy was staggering, the threads weaving through history and politics with chilling precision. Jakub's warnings about unknown watchers and imminent danger echoed the paranoia she had felt creeping in since her first discovery. "Why help me?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because," Jakub replied, "someone has to stop this before it's too late. And I think that someone is you." A silence fell between them, thick with unspoken fears and tentative hope. Elena's mind raced. Could she afford to trust this man, whose past was as murky as the secrets they sought to uncover? Yet the alternative was solitude in a world that was closing in around her. She finally nodded, a small, resolute movement. "All right, but no secrets." Jakub smiled faintly. "No secrets." As they stepped out of the cafe into the rain-soaked streets, the city lights shimmered through the droplets, casting a surreal glow on the cobblestones. The partnership was forged, fragile yet vital. In the heart of Prague, beneath the watchful eyes of history's shadows, Elena Novak took her first step from isolated scholar to hunted operative. The night air was thick with foreboding, but also the promise of revelation. And as the storm gathered overhead, so too did the forces that would shape her destiny. The Web Titans. Elena Novak sat hunched over her battered oak desk, the faint glow of a single desk lamp casting a pool of light over the scattered parchments and digital devices arrayed before her. Outside, the muted sounds of Prague at night, a distant siren, the occasional clatter of footsteps on cobblestones filtered through the cracked window. But inside her cramped apartment, silence reigned. The silence was a fragile veil, one that Elena knew could be shattered at any moment. Her fingers traced the cryptic symbols she had painstakingly decoded over the past days. Each fragment of the cipher peeled back a layer of a truth so vast and insidious that it threatened to unravel everything she thought she knew about power and history. The latest message was more explicit than any before, a coded reference to a high-ranking government official whose name was veiled in allegory but unmistakable to Elena's trained eye. She read the passage again, her breath catching as the implications settled in. The cult's tendrils, ancient and malignant, had woven themselves into the very fabric of modern governance. Her hands trembled slightly, a mixture of adrenaline and dread coursing through her veins. This was no longer an academic pursuit. It was a battle for survival. A sudden noise outside, a faint scraping, a shadow passing beneath the window, snapped Elena from her reverie. Her heart hammered as she rose cautiously, moving to peer through the thin curtain. The street was deserted, slick with rain from an earlier downpour, reflections of street lamps shimmering in puddles. But the feeling of being watched clung to her like a second skin. She moved quickly to secure the window before retreating to the center of the room. The shadows in her apartment seemed to stretch and twist, the walls closing in. She was not alone in her discovery. The conspiracy was aware, and it was closing in. Her phone vibrated sharply on the desk. A message from Jakub Marek. "Meet me at the usual place, now." Jakub was her reluctant ally, a pragmatist with a past as murky as the secrets they chased. Despite her deep-seated distrust of anyone with intelligence ties, she knew she needed him. Grabbing her coat and a small satchel, Elena slipped out into the rain-soaked night. The streets of Prague were a labyrinth of history and shadows, but tonight they felt more like a trap. Every footstep echoed too loudly. Every glance over her shoulder revealed a flicker of movement. The city's ancient stones seemed to whisper warnings she couldn't afford to ignore. Jakub waited in a narrow alley, his rugged figure barely visible under the brim of a soaked cap. Without a word, he grasped her arm, pulling her into the relative safety of the shadows. His eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the street ahead. "They're watching you," Jakub said quietly, voice low but urgent. "You've stirred something dangerous." Elena swallowed hard, the weight of his words settling like lead in her stomach. "I found proof. They're involved people at the highest levels." Jakub nodded grimly. "Then they won't stop until they silence you." Together, they moved swiftly through the city's back alleys, evading unseen pursuers. The constant threat of betrayal gnawed at Elena, a reminder that trust was a currency she could ill afford to spend. Back at a safe house cluttered with maps, encrypted notes, and hastily scrawled theories, the pair pored over the decoded messages. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows, mirroring the darkness creeping into their lives. "We need to move faster," Elena said, her voice taut. "If they're this close, every moment counts." Jakub's jaw tightened. "I'll organize protection. But you have to be ready. This isn't just about secrets anymore. It's about survival." Elena nodded, steeling herself against the rising tide of fear and uncertainty. The web was tightening, and she was caught in its center. With each new revelation, the stakes climbed higher, and the line between ally and enemy blurred. As dawn threatened the horizon, Elena's resolve hardened. She would uncover the truth, no matter the cost. But as the first light seeped through the windows, a chilling realization settled over her. In this deadly game of secrets and betrayal, No one was truly safe, not even her. And the conspiracy was watching. Elena Novak sat alone at a small wooden table in the shadowed back room of a cafe perched beside the Voltivor River. The late afternoon sun cast a muted golden glow through the narrow windows, mingling with the faint scent of roasted coffee beans and aged paper that lingered in the air. Her fingers traced the edges of a worn, leather-bound journal she had uncovered days earlier in the secret archives beneath Prague. The manuscript was unlike anything she had ever encountered, a cryptic tapestry of medieval symbols interwoven with arcane ciphers that hinted at a clandestine world buried beneath centuries of history. As she pored over the faded pages, a hesitant voice interrupted her concentration. "Excuse me, are you Elena Novak?" The voice belonged to a young woman whose pale complexion and intense eyes immediately caught Elena's attention. She wore a simple yet elegant coat, her dark hair pulled back to reveal a face marked by both intelligence and guarded reserve. "Yes, I am," Elena replied cautiously, studying the stranger. "And you are?" "Sophia Lang," the woman said, sliding a slim briefcase onto the table. "I specialize in medieval secret societies and their rituals. I've been following your work in the archives. I believe we can help each other." Elena regarded Sophia carefully. Trust was a scarce commodity in her line of work, especially now when shadows moved just beneath the surface of every discovery. Still, the prospect of collaboration was too valuable to dismiss outright. "Very well," Elena said, gesturing to the scattered papers. "Let's see what secrets we can uncover together." Their partnership began in the hushed depths of the secret archives, where shafts of pale daylight filtered through dusty windows, illuminating the yellowed manuscripts sprawled across a heavy oak table. Together, they delved into the labyrinth of symbols, codes, and rituals encoded within the texts. Sophia's expertise in historical context complemented Elena's cryptographic prowess, allowing them to unravel layers of meaning that had confounded scholars for centuries. Hours melted away as they cross-referenced obscure references to ancient rites, clandestine meetings, and the cult's enduring influence on the political landscape. Sophia pointed out subtle variations in iconography that suggested a secret hierarchy within the cult, while Elena identified recurring numerical patterns that hinted at a master code still waiting to be cracked. Despite their progress, an undercurrent of tension simmered beneath their collaboration. One evening, as the city's lights flickered to life beyond the archive's stained glass, Sophia's voice faltered as she revealed a personal truth. "My family has been connected to the cult for generations," she confessed, her gaze dropping to the worn pages before them. "They were keepers of the rituals, guardians of the secrets. It's why I've dedicated my life to uncovering the truth, to break free from the legacy I inherited." Elena absorbed the revelation in silence, the weight of Sophia's confession settling like a shadow between them. The historian's vulnerability was palpable, yet it introduced a new layer of complexity to their alliance. Could she truly trust someone so intimately tied to the very conspiracy they sought to dismantle? As the night deepened, the two women left the archives and found themselves on a narrow bridge overlooking the river, the city's glow reflecting in the water below. The air was cool and carried the faint murmur of distant voices and the soft rustling of leaves stirred by a gentle breeze. "We're in this together now," Elena said quietly, breaking the silence. "No matter where it leads." Sophia nodded, her pale eyes glinting with resolve. For the truth, whatever the cost, their pact was forged in the quiet shadows of Prague's ancient heart, a fragile alliance bound by secrets, trust, and the looming specter of betrayal. As they turned back toward the labyrinthine streets, both understood that the path ahead would test not only their intellect and courage, but the very limits of their trust. Despite the progress they had made, the mystery deepened with every uncovered cipher and whispered legend. The cult's reach stretched far beyond the dusty archives, entwining itself with the present in ways neither woman could yet fully grasp. But one thing was certain: the secrets of the past would not remain buried forever, and the cost of unveiling them might demand more than either was prepared to pay. Elena's mind raced with possibilities and dangers as she prepared for the next phase of their investigation. The shadows beneath Prague concealed more than ancient manuscripts. They hid a legacy of power, deception, and betrayal that threatened to engulf them both. Yet in the fragile alliance with Sophia, Elena found a spark of hope, a chance to break the cycle of silence and expose the truth that had long been buried in darkness. As the night deepened and the city breathed around them, Elena felt the weight of the Cipher's secrets settle firmly on her shoulders. The journey was only beginning, and the maze of history and conspiracy awaited them in the depths below. The stakes had never been higher, and the price of failure immeasurable. With a final glance at the glowing skyline, Elena whispered to herself, "We will uncover the truth, no matter what it takes." And with that, she stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face the shadows that lurked beneath the surface of history and human ambition. Beneath the ancient city of Prague, where the cobblestones above whispered stories of centuries past, Elena Novak and Sophia Lang pressed onward into the labyrinthine depths that few had dared to explore. The air grew heavier with each descending step, thick with the scent of damp stone and forgotten secrets. Elena's torch cast long shadows that flickered against the uneven walls, illuminating the narrow corridor as they moved cautiously, their footsteps muffled by layers of dust and time. Sophia's breath came in shallow bursts, eyes wide as she absorbed the oppressive atmosphere. She glanced sideways at Elena, whose sharp eyes scanned every detail, alert to the slightest anomaly. "This place, it feels alive," Sophia whispered, her voice barely piercing the silence that enveloped them. Elena nodded, gripping her torch tighter. "The cult's influence is embedded in these walls. Every corner, every crack tells a story they wanted to bury. But not all stories stay hidden forever." Their path led them to a heavy iron door, its surface etched with intricate symbols that mirrored those found in the manuscripts they had decoded earlier. With a shared glance, they pushed it open, revealing a vaulted chamber that seemed untouched by time. Dust motes floated lazily in the stale air, settling upon piles of ancient manuscripts, tattered tapestries, and artifacts of an ominous nature. Elena approached a low wooden table cluttered with relics, a silver medallion inscribed with cryptic runes, faded parchments stained by age, and a rusted dagger whose blade bore the unmistakable markings of ritual use. Her fingers trembled slightly as she picked up the medallion, tracing the delicate engravings with reverence. "These symbols, they're a form of coded language, a cipher within a cipher," she murmured, already piecing together their layered meanings. Sophia leaned over a nearby manuscript, her pale face illuminated by the flickering torchlight. "Look at this," she said, pointing to a series of faded frescoes painted on the chamber's curved walls. The images depicted shadowy figures performing clandestine rituals, their faces obscured by masks resembling ancient beasts. The cult's methods weren't just about secrecy. They were about shaping belief, controlling history through fear and myth. A sudden faint noise echoed from the labyrinth beyond the scrape of stone or the whisper of footsteps. Both women froze, their eyes darting toward the corridor's mouth. The silence that followed was thick and suffocating, reminding them that they were vulnerable here, exposed far beneath the city's bustling streets. "We're not alone," Elena whispered, signaling for Sophia to follow her back toward the exit. As they retraced their steps, the oppressive weight of the past pressed upon them, mingling with the present dangers that shadowed their every move. Outside the chamber, the narrow corridors seemed to close in tighter, the flickering torchlight revealing cryptic markings that only deepened the mystery. Trust between Elena and Sophia felt fragile, strained by the secrets each now harbored, not only about the cult, but about their own pasts and motivations. "We need to share this with Jacob," Elena said finally, breaking the heavy silence. "These artifacts, they prove the cult's influence has never truly faded. It's woven into the fabric of power even today." Sophia nodded, though a shadow crossed her face. "And if we're right, then the danger isn't just historical. It's here, now, and it's watching us." As they emerged from the labyrinth into the cold night air, the city above seemed oblivious to the secrets buried beneath. Yet Elena knew the truth was a ticking time bomb, one that could shatter everything if unleashed too soon. The path ahead was uncertain, riddled with betrayal and peril, but the revelations beneath the surface had steeled her resolve. The shadows of the past were not just stories, they were weapons, and Elena was determined to decipher every last one of them, no matter the cost. But as the night deepened, so did the sense of encroaching menace. Somewhere in the labyrinth, unseen eyes followed their every step, waiting for the moment to strike. Elena's pulse quickened not just from the weight of the secrets uncovered, but from the growing certainty that the line between ally and enemy had never been thinner. The city of Prague held its breath, the secrets beneath its streets stirring from their long slumber. And Elena Novak was now at the heart of a storm that threatened to consume everything she had fought to uncover. The labyrinth was no longer just a place of history, was a battleground where trust was scarce and survival was the ultimate cipher to crack. As she glanced back toward the shadowed entrance of the chamber one last time, Elena knew that what lay beneath the surface was only the beginning. The true challenge was yet to come. The damp air of the secret archives beneath Prague seemed heavier than usual as Elena Novak hunched over an ancient manuscript, the flickering light of her flashlight casting long shadows across the cryptic symbols before her. Every letter, every mark, felt like a key to an unseen doorway she was desperate to unlock. Yet, beneath the surface of her focused determination, a disquieting feeling gnawed at her, the unsettling notion that unseen eyes were watching, that every step she took echoed in corridors far beyond her reach. Elena's fingers traced the faded ink of the manuscript, a complex cipher that had consumed countless nights of her life. Tonight, however, was different. She had just uncovered a fragment of a message hinting at a link between the cult and high-ranking political figures. The implications were staggering, but before she could fully grasp the consequences, a sudden noise from the darkened hallway jolted her from her reverie. "Elena," a familiar voice whispered urgently. Jacob Marek emerged from the shadows, his rugged face etched with concern. "We need to talk. Now, it's no longer safe here." The two slipped out of the archives, moving swiftly through the winding streets of Prague until they reached a small, nondescript cafe where the murmur of distant conversations provided cover. Jacob's eyes darted around nervously as he lowered his voice. "Someone we trusted has turned. The information we thought was secure has been leaked. This isn't just a leak, it's a calculated betrayal. Our enemies are one step ahead." Elena's heart pounded. The betrayal cut deeper than any threat. It meant the conspiracy's tendrils reached further than she had feared, perhaps even into her closest circle. "Who?" she demanded, voice barely above a whisper. Jacob hesitated, the weight of his own secrets pressing down. "I don't know for sure, but I've seen signs, messages intercepted, contacts compromised. We need to be cautious. Trust no one blindly." The cafe's warmth felt suddenly stifling, the clink of cups and distant laughter mocking her growing paranoia. Elena felt the familiar walls of isolation close in, yet a spark of defiance flared within her. Back in the labyrinth beneath the city, the shadowy figure responsible for the betrayal moved with practiced stealth. Clad in dark clothing, the betrayer slipped through the maze of corridors, clutching stolen documents that revealed Elena's latest breakthroughs. Each step echoed a cold promise: the conspiracy's secrets would remain buried, no matter the cost. The stolen information soon reached Viktor Kral's operatives, who sprang into action. Elena's safe spaces collapsed rapidly as she found herself targeted by unseen assailants. A sudden ambush forced her to flee the archives in haste, her mind racing to piece together who had turned against her. In the rain-soaked streets of Prague, Elena paused beneath the dim glow of a street lamp, droplets mingling with the sweat on her brow. The betrayal felt like a knife twisting deeper, yet amidst the storm, her resolve crystallized. She would not let this treachery silence her. Instead, it strengthened her determination to expose the conspiracy's dark heart. Her thoughts raced. Who could she trust now? Was Jacob's warning sincere, or was he himself compromised? The lines between friend and foe blurred dangerously, and every shadow seemed to conceal a threat. As the chapter closed, Elena steeled herself for the battles ahead. The labyrinth beneath Prague held many secrets, but none as dangerous as the ones born from betrayal. With the city's ancient stones as silent witnesses, she prepared to confront the darkness inside, and out knowing that the path to truth was now more perilous than ever. The first betrayal was just the beginning, and Elena Novak was ready to fight back. Jacob Marek's voice was low, measured, as he began to recount the shadows of his former life. The safe house they had retreated to was a narrow, dimly lit room tucked away in one of Prague's nondescript neighborhoods, its walls lined with maps and cryptic notes pinned like battle plans for an invisible war. Outside, the city hummed quietly under the veil of night. But inside, the atmosphere was charged with a tension that seemed to thicken with every word Jacob spoke. "There are things I should have told you sooner," Jacob began, his eyes flickering with a mixture of regret and resolve. Elena sat across from him, her posture rigid but attentive, the faint glow of a desk lamp casting sharp shadows across her face. "My missions weren't always clean. There were betrayals, within my own agency. People I thought I could trust turned out to be working against us." Elena's heart quickened. She had suspected layers of deception in her investigation, but hearing it confirmed by someone she was trying to trust made the reality all the more harrowing. "What kind of betrayals?" she asked, her voice steady despite the storm brewing inside. Jacob hesitated, then leaned forward. "Operatives, selling secrets, manipulating outcomes to serve hidden agendas. It wasn't just about intelligence, it was about control, and the cult we're chasing. They've infiltrated deeper than anyone imagined." The implications were staggering. Elena's mind raced as she processed the new information, her analytical instincts sharpening even as doubt gnawed at her. Was Jacob himself a double agent? Or was he a man caught in a web too tangled to escape alone? Over the next few hours, Jacob laid bare fragments of his past missions, each tale more unsettling than the last. He produced worn files and faded photographs, evidence of covert operations that skirted the line between patriotism and treachery. Elena pored over the documents, the weight of betrayal pressing down with every detail. Despite the growing unease, an unspoken bond began to form between them. In the quiet moments between revelations, they shared brief, vulnerable glances that conveyed more than words could. Jacob's guarded demeanor softened, revealing glimpses of a man burdened by his history but determined to make amends. At one point, they sat down to a sparse meal of bread and cheese, the silence heavy. Elena broke it, her voice tentative. "Why tell me all this now?" Jacob looked up, eyes earnest. "Because if we don't trust each other, we'll never get out of this alive. And because in all this darkness, you're the closest thing I have to an ally." Night deepened outside, and Elena found herself drawn to the window. The labyrinthine streets of Prague stretched below, their twisting paths a mirror of the complexity of the conspiracy she was unraveling. The city held secrets beneath its cobblestones, just as Jacob's past held truths she needed to understand. Could she trust him? The question echoed in her mind, unanswered but unavoidable. Yet as the chill of the night seeped in, a steely determination took root. Together they were stronger, flawed, fragile, but united by a shared purpose. The chapter closed on Elena's silhouette framed against the window, the city's lights flickering like distant beacons. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with peril and betrayal, but she would face it head-on. The truth demanded nothing less. The flickering candlelight cast long shadows across the cluttered table as Jacob unfolded another piece of his past. "There was one operation," he whispered, "where everything went wrong. A mole within our ranks fed information to the enemy. We lost agents, and worse, our credibility." Elena's fingers traced the edge of a faded photograph, a group of men in indistinct uniforms, faces blurred by time. "How did you survive?" "By keeping my head down," Jacob replied grimly. "But it cost me alliances. Friends became enemies overnight. I had to leave the agency or be consumed by it." Her trust wavered, but so did her resolve to abandon him. In this murky world, allies were scarce, and enemies wore familiar faces. Their conversations stretched into the early hours, weaving between tactical details and personal confessions. Jacob's stories illuminated the depth of the conspiracy's reach, but also the resilience of those who fought from the shadows. By dawn, Elena felt the fragile threads of trust begin to knit. They were no longer just the cryptographer and the ex-agent. They were comrades in a battle that spanned centuries and blurred the lines between friend and foe. As the first light filtered through the curtains, she knew one thing for certain: Jacob's past was a labyrinth of secrets. But together, they might just find the way out. The narrow cobblestone streets of Prague had grown colder as dusk settled, and Elena Novak wrapped her coat tighter against the biting wind. The city's ancient facades loomed around her like silent sentinels, shadows deepening in the recesses where street lamps failed to reach. She glanced up at the towering spires of the old cathedral, their silhouettes etched starkly against the steel-grey sky. Somewhere within those hallowed walls awaited a man whose knowledge could either illuminate her path or plunge her deeper into darkness. Father Tomas was not the kind of man one found easily. Elena had tracked whispered references to him through dusty tomes and hushed conversations among archivists. A cleric with an unusual interest in the occult, a keeper of forbidden knowledge, long buried beneath layers of dogma and secrecy. When she finally arranged the meeting, she chose a small, neglected chapel on the city's edgier place, where the veil between past and present seemed thin. Pushing open the heavy wooden door, Elena was greeted by a faint rush of cool air, scented with aged incense and melting beeswax. The interior was sparsely furnished: a stone altar, rows of worn wooden pews, and stained glass windows fragmented by cracks, their colors muted in the fading light. The silence was profound, broken only by the echo of her footsteps and the distant tolling of a bell. From the shadows emerged Father Tomas, his gaunt frame draped in threadbare clerical robes. His eyes, deep-set and shadowed, held a solemn weight as though burdened by secrets centuries old. "You seek truths best left undisturbed," he said quietly, his voice gravelly yet steady. "But the past does not yield its shadows without a price." Elena met his gaze, her own eyes sharp despite the weariness etched around them. "I have come too far to turn back now. The cipher, this conspiracy, it has roots deeper than I imagined." He nodded slowly and motioned her closer to the altar where an ancient manuscript lay beneath a glass case. "These are the rites that bind the cult across ages," he began. "Not mere superstition, but a language of power. Symbols carved in blood and silence." Carefully, he lifted the manuscript, revealing cryptic symbols intertwined with archaic script. The pages appeared fragile, yellowed with time, yet the ink retained a dark vibrancy. Elena's fingers trembled as she traced the characters, recognizing patterns echoing those in the cipher she had been decoding. The connection was undeniably and chilling. "They watch," Father Tomas whispered, eyes darting toward the chapel's shadowed corners. "Always watching." The cult's reach is not confined to these stones. It stretches into the corridors of power, twisting history to its will. Elena felt a shiver that was not entirely due to the cold. "Who can I trust?" He hesitated, then placed a hand on her shoulder with surprising gentleness. "Trust is a currency, scarce and costly. But heed this. The truth you seek will make you a target, not just of men, but of the dark legacies they serve." The cryptic nature of his warning only deepened the knot of unease in Elena's stomach. Yet beneath the ambiguity lay a stark urgency. Time was slipping through her fingers, and the labyrinth beneath Prague was not the only maze she had to navigate. She needed allies, but even their faces could mask betrayal. Father Tomas handed her a folded parchment, sealed with a symbol matching one she had seen in the manuscript, twisted Ouroboros entwined with a dagger. "This is a fragment of what I can share. Use it wisely." Elena accepted the parchment, the weight of it heavier than its paper. "Thank you," she said. "I won't forget this." But even as the words left her lips, she knew the path ahead was fraught with peril and deception. As she stepped back out into the night, the chill seemed to deepen. The city's labyrinthine streets stretched before her, cloaked in darkness and secrets. Father Tomas's words echoed in her mind, mingling with the cryptic symbols and half-revealed truths that had become her obsession. Somewhere in the shadows, eyes watched, and the game was far from over. Elena's breath formed misty clouds in the cold air as she walked briskly, her senses heightened. Every rustle of leaves, every distant footstep, set her nerves alight. The stakes had never been higher, and the lines between friend and foe blurred with every passing moment. Yet, with resolve hardening in her chest, she vowed to uncover the full story, no matter the cost. The secrets beneath Prague were awakening, and with each revelation, the danger grew more palpable. But Elena Novak was no stranger to darkness. She would face it head-on, armed with knowledge, courage, and the cryptic warnings that both haunted and guided her through the night. The subterranean chamber beneath Prague was cloaked in shadows, the only illumination a few flickering candles that cast uneven light across the worn stone walls. Elena Novak sat at a heavy oak table, her sharp eyes scanning over an array of ancient manuscripts and encrypted files that sprawled before her like a chaotic tapestry of secrets. The musty scent of old parchment mingled with the faint metallic taps of her laptop's cooling fan. a juxtaposition of past and present that defined her quest. Sophia Lang leaned over the table, her pale face illuminated by the soft candlelight. "Look here," she murmured, pointing to a series of symbols embedded within the margins of a centuries-old document. "This isn't just a cipher, it's a cipher within a cipher. Layers of encryption designed to protect the core secret." Jacob Marek stood nearby, arms crossed, his rugged features hardened by years of intelligence work. His eyes, ever watchful, flicked between Elena and Sophia, betraying a subtle but persistent wariness. "You're saying the cult went to great lengths to hide their tracks," he said, voice low but edged with skepticism. "Makes you wonder who else knows about this." Elena nodded, fingers tapping nervously on the table. "Exactly, and the more we uncover, the more dangerous this becomes. But we have to press on. There's too much at stake." The three of them had come to this secret chamber seeking clarity, but instead found more questions swirling like smoke around their heads. Piecing together fragmented clues felt like assembling a puzzle where pieces were deliberately missing or misleadingly shaped. Each decoded message revealed a new thread connecting the centuries-old cult to present-day political machinations, a revelation that sent a chill down Elena's spine. Sophia's voice dropped further as she traced a line under a sequence of encoded dates and names. "These references here correspond to recent political appointments and unexplained policy shifts. It's all connected." Jacob's eyes narrowed. "If that's true, then what we're dealing with isn't just a historical curiosity. It's an active network with influence at the highest levels." Elena's mind raced. The implications were staggering. She glanced at Sophia, whose intense eyes reflected the same mixture of fear and resolve. Then to Jacob, whose guarded demeanor hinted at inner conflict. Tension thickened the air. Trust, always fragile in the world they inhabited, now felt like a brittle thread stretched taut. Jacob excused himself abruptly, stepping into the cold night to make a call on his burner phone. The door closed behind him with a soft thud, leaving Elena and Sophia alone in the cramped room. Sophia's voice broke the silence. "Do you really trust him?" Elena hesitated, her gaze fixed on the scattered documents. "I don't know anymore, but without him, we're exposed." Minutes stretched as the weight of their predicament pressed down. Outside, the city of Prague moved unaware above them, its cobblestone streets and Gothic spires hiding centuries of secrets beneath. Jacob returned, his expression unreadable. Elena met his gaze, searching for reassurance, but found only guarded resolve. Together, they turned back to the table, the decrypted page in front of Elena, revealing a roster of names and dates that implicated powerful figures in the cult's shadowy network. Her hands trembled slightly as the enormity of the conspiracy settled over her like a suffocating fog. The threads of history and politics converged here, in this hidden chamber, binding their fates to a dangerous truth. "We're running out of time," Elena whispered, "but we have what we need. Now we have to decide how far we're willing to go." Outside, the distant toll of a bell echoed through the night, a somber reminder that the past was never truly buried and that the fight for truth was only just beginning. The chapter closed with the trio poised on the edge of revelation, their fragile alliance tested by suspicion and the looming threat of betrayal. Trust was a luxury they could ill afford, yet it remained their only hope in a world where secrets were weapons and every shadow could conceal an enemy. The cafe was an unassuming place nestled between two ancient buildings in Prague's old town, its warm amber lighting casting gentle shadows on the worn wooden tables. Elena Novak arrived early, her sharp eyes scanning the room as she took a seat in a shadowed corner. Her dark hair was pulled back tightly, her practical attire blending into the understated elegance of the establishment. She was here on a lead, a rare opportunity to connect with someone who might hold the key to unraveling the conspiracy that had haunted her nights. Minutes later, Katerina Vesela entered, her confident stride immediately commanding attention despite the low-key setting. Early 30s, with sharp features and a poised demeanor. Katerina was the kind of journalist who had made a career out of chasing stories that others feared to touch. She slid into the seat opposite Elena, placing a slim tablet on the table with a soft click. "I've been following your work," Katerina began, voice low but steady. "And I think I have something you'll want to see." Elena leaned in, eyes narrowing as Katerina unlocked the device to reveal encrypted documents and photographs. The files detailed a web of political corruption, with names and dates that corresponded disturbingly with the cryptic references Elena had uncovered in the manuscripts beneath the city. This ties the conspiracy directly to the highest levels," Elena whispered, her breath catching. Katerina nodded. "It's bigger than we thought. And dangerous." Their conversation was cautious, every word weighed carefully as the noise of the cafe buzzed around them, a stark contrast to the gravity of their discovery. Elena's mind raced, the implications of this alliance both exhilarating and terrifying. Partnering with a journalist meant exposure, but it also meant a chance to break the silence that had protected the cult's insidious influence for centuries. Back in her apartment, Elena pored over the documents late into the night. The glow of her laptop illuminated her determined face, shadows from the rain-streaked window dancing across the walls. Each piece of evidence she cross-referenced deepened the conspiracy's reach into political corridors she had only glimpsed before. But danger was closing in. Katerina's recent brush with unknown assailants in a crowded Prague market was a stark reminder of the stakes. The cacophony of the city masked the faint footsteps chasing her, forcing Katerina to duck into an alleyway where her heart pounded fiercely. The threat was real, and it was relentless. Despite this, the two women met again as twilight painted the city in hues of gold and purple. From a rooftop overlooking Prague's skyline, the sun setting behind Gothic spires cast long shadows, mirroring the darkness they sought to expose. In silence, Elena and Katerina shared a moment of resolve. The risk was immense, but the truth demanded to be told. "We move forward," Elena said quietly, the weight of their mission settling between them. Katerina nodded, a flicker of hope breaking through the tension. Together, as night enveloped the city, the partnership between cryptographer and journalist marked a turning point. The conspiracy's secrets were no longer confined to the shadows, but with every step toward exposure, the dangers multiplied. Trust was fragile, and betrayal lurked nearby. Yet, in that fragile alliance, a spark of courage ignited, a promise that the truth would no longer be silenced. The dim corridors beneath Prague's ancient streets had always felt like a second home to Elena Novak, but tonight they seemed more like a trap than a refuge. The cold stone walls, slick with the dampness of the underground, echoed her hurried footsteps. Her breath came in quick bursts, the rhythmic sound mingling with the distant dripping of water. Every shadow seemed to flicker with menace, every creak a warning. She clutched the leather-bound manuscript closer, its fragile pages containing secrets that could topple empires and, now, it seemed, put her life in jeopardy. Elena's sharp eyes darted ahead as she turned a corner. The faint hum of the city above a distant murmur behind the oppressive silence of the labyrinth. Suddenly, a subtle metallic whisper sliced through the air, a click, barely audible but unmistakable. Elena's heart leaped as a dart zipped past her ear, grazing a lock of dark hair. The sharp scent of poison lingered in the air. Her instincts screamed, and she dove behind a stone column just as a second dart embedded itself in the wall where she had stood moments before. Her pulse thundered in her ears. Whoever was after her was closer than she had dared imagine. The labyrinth was no longer just a place of secrets. It was a battleground. As Elena caught her breath, footsteps approached fast and heavy. She peeked around the column to see a figure, clad in dark clothing, moving with lethal intent. The intruder's eyes glinted coldly in the dim light. Elena's mind raced. She needed help. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. A coded message from Jacob. Safe house compromised. Evacuate immediately. Jacob Marek was never far behind when danger struck. She sprang from her cover, sprinting deeper into the maze-like corridors, her footsteps echoing in a frantic rhythm. The labyrinth twisted and turned, but Elena's familiarity with its layout gave her an edge. She burst through a narrow archway into a shadowed alley, gasping for air. Suddenly, Jacob appeared, his rugged form blocking the path of a second assailant. The two men collided with a harsh grunt, the scuffle fierce and swift. Jacob's hands were steady and sure, trained by years in Czech intelligence. With a decisive maneuver, he subdued the attacker, pressing him to the cold stone floor. "Elena, get out of here," Jacob hissed, glancing around for more threats. She nodded, adrenaline sharpening her senses as she darted away, retracing her steps back toward the archive's entrance. The narrow passageways seemed endless, but her resolve was unbreakable. Later, in the flickering candlelight of the archives, Elena sat with Martin Dvorak, the archivist whose quiet vigilance had earned her trust. They pored over the manuscript's encrypted text, their voices low and urgent. "This passage," Martin whispered, pointing to a series of symbols, "suggests a direct link between the cult's rituals and modern political manipulations. Whoever is behind this knows exactly how far-reaching their influence is." Elena nodded, her fingers trembling slightly. "That's why they want to silence me. But I won't let them win. Not now." The weight of the conspiracy pressed down on them, but so did the flicker of hope born from their discoveries. Night deepened outside, and Elena returned to her apartment, the city's distant lights shimmering like stars in a dark sky. Alone, she spread her notes across the small table, eyes scanning each line with fierce concentration. Every decoded fragment was a piece of a deadly puzzle. Every close call a reminder of the stakes. Yet beneath the fear, a steely determination took root. The truth was within reach, and Elena Novak was ready to face whatever shadows lay ahead to bring it into the light. Her phone buzzed again, a silent signal that the hunt was far from over. But Elena was no longer just a cryptographer. She was a force determined to expose the lies lurking beneath the surface of power. The game had changed, and she was ready to play for keeps. As the first light of dawn crept through the window, Elena's eyes remained fixed on the cipher, the promise of revelation burning brighter than ever. The close calls had sharpened her resolve. There was no turning back now. The underground archives beneath Prague were silent, save for the faint rustle of ancient parchment and the occasional echo of distant footsteps. Sophia Lang sat hunched over a fragile ledger, the yellowed pages brittle beneath her pale fingers. The flickering light of a lone lamp cast long shadows across her intense eyes, which darted back and forth as she traced the faded ink. The ledger's cover was embossed with a family crest, one she recognized instantly but wished she didn't. Intertwined with the crests were cryptic symbols she had seen before in the cult documents Elena had uncovered. A cold knot formed in her stomach. "Sophia," Elena's voice was soft but edged with concern as she approached. Having noticed the young historian's silence, stretched longer than usual. Sophia looked up, her face drained of color. "It's my family," she whispered, voice barely audible. "They were part of this." Elena's eyes narrowed, but she said nothing, allowing Sophia the space to explain. The ledger detailed transactions, coded messages, and ritual notes linking Sophia's ancestors to the medieval cult that had long manipulated Prague's political landscape. The revelation hit like a thunderclap, shaking the foundations of Sophia's identity and her partnership with Elena. "Why didn't you tell me earlier?" Elena finally asked, the hurt barely concealed beneath her cautious tone. Sophia swallowed hard, guilt and fear warring within her. "I was afraid it would change everything between us, that it would make me part of the problem." The air between them thickened with tension. Sophia could feel the weight of Elena's mistrust pressing down, even as she longed for understanding. The labyrinth that surrounded them seemed to close in tighter, the shadows whispering secrets of deceit and betrayal. Later, Sophia found herself alone in a shadowed alcove, the distant dripping of water echoing like a metronome of her turmoil. Her fingers trembled as she clutched a pendant, an heirloom passed down through generations, etched with the same arcane symbols she had discovered in the ledger. The silent corridors of the labyrinth mirrored her isolation. The knowledge that her bloodline was entwined with the cult's dark legacy left her feeling both cursed and compelled. The next meeting with Elena was fraught with unspoken questions and fragile truce. The two cryptographers sat across from one another, illuminated by the dim glow of their screens and scattered documents. Words were chosen carefully, trust tested with every sentence. "We can't let this divide us," Elena said finally, her voice resolute. "The truth is bigger than our pasts. We need each other now more than ever." Sophia nodded, a spark of determination igniting amid the shadows of doubt. Together, she agreed, we expose the lies. As the night deepened, the two women resumed their work, decoding messages layered with centuries of secrets. The labyrinth beneath Prague bore witness to their fragile alliance, a beacon of hope against the encroaching darkness of betrayal. But even as they pressed forward, Sophia knew the path ahead would be riddled with challenges. Her family's shadow would not fade easily, and the cult's reach was long and insidious. The stakes had never been higher. With a sudden sharp knock reverberating through the archive's heavy doors, the fragile calm shattered. Elena looked up, eyes sharp and alert. We're not alone. Sophia's heart pounded, the chilling realization settling in. The past was not done with them yet. The air grew cooler and heavier as Elena Novak descended deeper into the heart of Prague's labyrinthian archives. The narrow stone steps echoed under her boots, each footfall swallowed by the thick silence that blanketed the underground. The faint glow of her flashlight pierced the darkness, illuminating walls etched with centuries-old graffiti and cryptic symbols that seemed to pulse with a hidden life. Beside her, Sophia Lang's breath came in slow, measured gasps, the historian's eyes wide with a mixture of excitement and apprehension. Martin Dvorak trailed behind, his usual calm tempered by a barely concealed tension, fingers brushing the rough stone for reassurance. "We're close," Martin whispered, his voice barely audible as he pushed against a section of the wall. The stone shifted slightly, revealing the outline of a concealed door. Elena exchanged a glance with Sophia before pressing her shoulder against the door's cold surface. With a reluctant groan, it gave way, opening into a cavernous chamber bathed in the pale light of a solitary bulb hanging from a rusted chain. The scent hit them instantly, a potent mixture of damp earth, aged paper, and something metallic, like the faintest trace of blood. Rows upon rows of shelves stretched into the shadows, laden with brittle manuscripts, leather-bound tomes, and neatly stacked folders marked with official seals and dates that startled Elena. This was no mere archive. It was a sanctuary where the past and present converged in a chilling testament to the cult's enduring power. Sophia moved forward, her fingers trembling slightly as she reached for a thick codex bound in cracked black leather. The cover bore an intricate sigil half obscured by dust, but unmistakable to those who knew its meaning. "These are original manuscripts," she breathed, eyes scanning the faded ink. "Rituals, symbols, codes, all preserved here, untouched." Elena knelt beside a nearby table, where a pile of modern intelligence files lay scattered. Her eyes darted over the names, dates, and classified stamps. "These are surveillance reports, government correspondences," she murmured, the threads of conspiracy weaving tighter in her mind. The cult isn't just history, they're active, embedded in the highest echelons of power. Martin's hands moved deftly, pulling out a folded map dotted with pins and coded annotations. "Look here," he said, tracing a line that connected Prague to several European capitals. "Their reach is vast." The weight of the discovery pressed down on Elena like the stone ceiling above. Every secret uncovered deepened the labyrinthine web of deceit she had entered. Yet, within that suffocating pressure, a spark ignited a fierce determination to unravel the truth, no matter the cost. "We must document everything," Elena said, voice steady despite the turmoil inside. "This is the proof we need to expose them. But we have to be careful. They know we're here." Sophia nodded, her pale face set with resolve. "The more we learn, the more dangerous it becomes. But I won't turn back, not now." As they gathered the ancient tomes and fragile files, the distant sound of footsteps echoed faintly through the stone corridors. Elena's heart quickened. The labyrinth was alive with shadows, some of them watching, waiting. In that moment, beneath the city's centuries-old streets, the past and present collided in a deadly dance of secrets and lies. Elena knew this was only the beginning. The labyrinth's heart had revealed its darkest truth. There was no turning back. With a final glance at the chamber, Elena steeled herself for the trials ahead. The conspiracy's roots ran deeper than she had dared imagine, but so did her resolve. The fight for truth was far from over. "Let's move," she whispered, stepping back into the shadows, the weight of history pressing on her shoulders, but the fire of purpose lighting her way. The rain had finally ceased, leaving the narrow streets of Prague slick and gleaming under the muted glow of the street lamps. Elena Novak followed Jacob, Marek through the labyrinthine alleys toward a safe house he claimed would offer the security they desperately needed. The building was an unassuming relic, its facade weathered and cracked, tucked away behind a shuttered storefront. As they slipped inside, the silence was punctuated only by the soft click of the door securing behind them. Inside the room was sparse wooden table stained from years of use, a single lamp casting a dim circle of light, and 2 chairs pulled close. Jacob moved with practiced efficiency, producing a worn leather satchel from which he extracted a stack of documents, their edges frayed and marked with cryptic annotations. Elena's sharp eyes flicked over the papers, her mind racing to piece together the puzzle that had consumed her for weeks. Yet, the true weight of the moment was not in the documents themselves, but in the quiet gravity that had settled over Jacob's features. "Before we go any further," Jacob began, his voice low but steady, "there's something you need to know. Something about my past and the mission that haunts me." Elena's gaze fixed on him, the flicker of doubt she had tried to suppress surfacing now in full force. She had always known Jacob's history was complicated, but the depths of his secrets were still a mystery. Jacob took a deep breath, his hands resting on the table. I was part of an operation designed to infiltrate and monitor a faction within the government suspected of colluding with the cult you're investigating. But it wasn't what we expected. The betrayal came from within my own agency. Elena's heart pounded. The betrayal she had feared was no longer a vague suspicion, but a confirmed reality. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" she asked, her voice tight with a mixture of frustration and pain. "Because I wasn't sure who to trust," Jacob admitted. "Every step I took, I felt eyes on me, friends turning away. I had to be careful even with you." The room seemed to close in, the shadows deepening as the magnitude of the conspiracy unfolded before them. Elena's analytical mind raced to reconcile this new information with everything she had uncovered. "Does this mean you were spying on me?" she demanded, the sting of betrayal sharp in her tone. Jacob shook his head vehemently. "No, I chose to protect you. Despite everything, I believe in what you're doing. But now, more than ever, we have to be cautious. The enemy is closer than we thought." For a moment, silence hung between them, thick, suffocating, yet charged with unspoken understanding. Elena realized that their fragile alliance was as much a shield as it was a weapon. Outside, the wind picked up, rattling the shutters and carrying the distant hum of the city that knew nothing of the darkness lurking beneath its streets. Elena folded the documents carefully, her resolve hardening. "We cross lines now," she said quietly. "Lines we can't uncross." Jacob nodded, eyes sharp and alert. "Then we make sure we're ready for what's on the other side." Suddenly, a sharp noise from the alley outside shattered the quiet. Jacob moved swiftly to the window, his body tense, every sense alert. Elena's breath caught as she pressed herself against the wall, clutching the papers like a lifeline. The city's labyrinth had just become a battleground, and the lines between friend and foe blurred into shadows. The cold night in Prague wrapped the city in a cloak of shadow and rain, the streets slick and gleaming with the city's neon reflections. Inside her modest apartment, Elena Novak sat hunched over a cluttered desk strewn with faded manuscripts and cryptic notes. The dim light flickered overhead, casting restless shadows across her weary face. Every muscle in her body was taut with exhaustion, yet her sharp eyes scanned the fragmented cipher with relentless determination. She had always known the path she had chosen was fraught with danger, but the creeping silence around her was unsettling. Allies she once relied upon had grown distant or disappeared altogether, their absence like a hollow echo in the labyrinth of her investigation. Paranoia gnawed at her mind. The silence felt like the breath of invisible enemies lurking just out of sight. Her thoughts shattered as a soft knock echoed through the hallway. Elena froze, heart pounding, then cautiously moved to the door. It was Jacob Marek, his rugged frame silhouetted against the faint streetlight. His face was grim, eyes scanning the empty corridor behind him. He stepped inside and shut the door quietly, his voice low and tense. "Elena," Jacob began, "we can't ignore it anymore. Someone close is feeding information to Victor Kral's network. Your every move is being watched." His words hung heavy in the room, thick with unspoken fears. Elena's breath caught. Suspicion had already seeded itself deep within her heart, but hearing it from Jacob made it all the more real. The two sat at the table, the weight of unspoken accusations pressing between them. Jacob recounted strange disappearances, whispered warnings intercepted by his contacts, and subtle betrayals that had chipped away at their progress. Elena's mind raced. Was it Sophia? Or perhaps even Jacob himself? Trust, once so vital, had become a fragile currency. Days later, the unsettling truth struck harder. Elena's phone buzzed abruptly with a message from Sophia Lang. The text was brief, cryptic. "They know. Be careful. I can't stay. Forgive me." Before Elena could reply, Sophia vanished without a trace. The pale cryptographer's disappearance sent a shockwave through Elena's already fraying nerves. Doubt and fear clawed at her. Had Sophia been compromised, or had she fled to protect them both? Determined to find answers alone, Elena ventured deeper into the secret archives beneath Prague. The labyrinthine corridors, cold and oppressive, seemed to close in around her. Every step echoed ominously, the faint drip of water and distant scurrying of rats punctuating the silence. Suddenly, a subtle shift in the shadows caught her eye. A barely perceptible trap set for an unwary intruder. Her pulse quickened as she narrowly avoided it, adrenaline surging through her veins. The labyrinth was no longer just a repository of secrets. It had become a deadly maze where unseen enemies hunted her. In the solitude of the archives, Elena grappled with the cruel reality of her situation. Isolation gnawed at her, but so did the burning need to uncover the truth. She knew that the conspiracy's roots ran deeper than she had imagined. Every betrayal was a thread in a tangled web, and she was the lone spider trying to unravel it. As she sat beneath the flickering lights of the underground vault, Elena's thoughts coalesced into a fierce resolve. She would expose the silent enemies around her, no matter the cost. But the question lingered, heavy and cold. Who could she trust when the shadows themselves seemed to whisper her name? The night outside deepened, and with it, the storm within Elena's heart. The dim glow of the laptop screen was the only light in the cavernous room beneath Prague's ancient streets. Elena Novak sat hunched over a tattered manuscript, worn edges curling like the secrets it contained. Her fingers, stained with ink and trembling with anticipation, traced the intricate symbols that sprawled across the brittle pages. Every line, every curve, seemed to hum with hidden meaning. Hours had passed unnoticed, the air thick with the scent of dust and old parchment. Sophia Lang leaned closer, her pale face illuminated by the cold light, eyes sharp and searching. "Look here," she whispered, tapping a sequence of symbols Elena had overlooked. "There's a pattern within the pattern, a code inside the code." Elena's breath caught. A metacode. Exactly, someone layered it deliberately, hiding a master key beneath the surface. The revelation electrified the room. Yet even as they pieced together the encrypted puzzle, the weight of their discovery pressed heavily upon them. The conspiracy was no longer merely a shadowy rumor. It was encoded in the very fabric of this manuscript. Jakub Marek, stationed by the heavy iron door, cast a wary glance down the dim corridor. His rugged features tightened with tension as distant footsteps echoed faintly. "We don't have much time," he muttered, voice low but urgent. Elena nodded, forcing herself to focus despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. "We need to decode this fully. It's the master key. It could expose everything." Working quickly, Elena and Sophia cross-referenced the metacode against previous fragments, their minds racing to unravel the intricate cipher. The room seemed to pulse with the rhythm of their synchronized efforts, the scratch of pen on paper. The soft click of keys whispered speculations. Minutes stretched like hours, until finally the last piece clicked into place. The screen flashed, illuminating a chilling message, a revelation linking centuries-old cult secrets with present-day power structures. The truth was laid bare, more devastating and far-reaching than either had imagined. But the sound of hurried footsteps grew louder, scraping against stone floors, closing in. Jakub's voice was sharp. "We have to move now." Elena grabbed the laptop, the manuscript, and a flash drive containing their partial translations. The trio fled through narrow passageways, the cold breath of Prague's underworld chasing them relentlessly. Each step carried the weight of discovery, the promise of exposing a conspiracy that had woven itself through history, and the peril that came with such forbidden knowledge. As they emerged into the dank night air, Elena's mind raced. The metacode was not just a key. It was a beacon, a call to arms. But with enemies closing in, the danger was far from over. The labyrinth beneath the city had revealed its deepest secret, and Elena knew the fight for truth was only beginning. She glanced at Sophia, whose eyes reflected equal parts fear and determination, then to Jacob, ever the vigilant protector. Together, they stepped into the shadows of Prague's streets, ready to face whatever lay ahead. The code within the code had been cracked. Now, the real battle was about to begin. The cold stone walls of the secret chamber beneath Prague seemed to close in around Elena Novak as she traced her fingers over the brittle pages of the ancient codex. The flickering lanterns cast dancing shadows on the manuscript's faded ink, revealing cryptic symbols and carefully scribed passages that whispered secrets long buried by time. Sophia Lang leaned in close, her intense eyes scanning the text with a scholar's precision, while Martin Dvorak stood quietly nearby, his face a mask of cautious anticipation. "Look at this," Elena murmured, pointing to an intricate diagram entwined with Latin annotations. "These rituals, they're not mere superstition. They're a blueprint for political control, woven into the very fabric of governance." Sophia nodded slowly, her voice barely above a whisper. "The cult's methods have evolved but never disappeared. They infiltrated royal courts, influenced treaties, and even shaped revolutions. This codex is a testament to their enduring legacy." The room felt charged with the weight of revelation. Elena's mind raced as she pieced together the fragments of history that now took on a sinister new clarity. The line between myth and reality blurred, revealing a shadow empire that had thrived on secrecy and manipulation. Martin carefully extracted a bundle of aged letters from a concealed compartment, their edges worn but the ink still legible. These correspondences confirm the cult's strategy of embedding agents within key political positions, he explained. They played a long game, ensuring their influence spanned generations. Elena's breath caught as she read a passage describing ceremonies that intertwined symbolic rites with calculated political moves, a chilling fusion of faith and power. "It's more than history," she said, her voice tight with disbelief. "It's an ongoing conspiracy." Sophia's gaze met hers, sharing the unspoken weight of this truth. "We're standing at the crossroads of past and present, Elena. Our next steps could change everything." Suddenly, the distant echo of footsteps shattered the fragile silence, reverberating through the labyrinth's twisting corridors. The reminder was clear: their discoveries had not gone unnoticed. Danger was closing in, relentless and unseen. Elena's heart pounded as she closed the codex, her resolve hardening. The cult's legacy was no mere relic. It was a living, breathing force that threatened to consume her world. But surrender was not an option. With Sophia and Martin beside her, she vowed to unravel the web of deceit and expose the darkness lurking beneath Prague's surface, no matter the cost. The shadows deepened, and with them, the stakes of the game Elena had been thrust into. Every secret uncovered brought her closer to the truth, but also closer to the edge of peril. The labyrinth awaited, its silent corridors promising both answers and danger in equal measure. And as Elena stepped forward, the question lingered: How far was she willing to go to break the cult's unyielding grip on history and power? The legacy of the cult was no longer hidden in the past. It was a present threat, a puzzle of codes and conspiracies that demanded to be solved. Elena's journey had only just crossed its most daunting threshold. The damp stone walls of the labyrinth seemed to close in tighter around Elena Novak as the weight of betrayal settled heavily on her chest. Alone in a narrow chamber, illuminated only by the faint, flickering light of a single lantern, she spread out the intercepted communications before her. The coded messages, painstakingly decrypted over endless nights, revealed a truth that stabbed through the fragile web of trust she had built. Jakub Marek, her closest ally, had been feeding information to Viktor Kral's operatives. Her fingers trembled as she traced the lines of text, each character a dagger twisting deeper into her resolve. Jakub's duplicity was not just a minor slip. It was a calculated betrayal that had endangered their entire investigation. The knowledge that someone she had relied upon was the very conduit for her enemies left her reeling. The stale air in the chamber hung thick, punctuated only by the soft drip of water echoing like a relentless metronome counting down to an inevitable confrontation. Memories of shared moments, Jakub's protective stances, his pragmatic advice, the flickers of camaraderie clashed violently with the stark reality before her. How had she missed the signs? Was she too trusting, too desperate for an ally in this shadowy labyrinth beneath Prague? Determined to confront the truth head-on, Elena rose, her mind racing through every interaction, every guarded glance Jakub had given her. She moved swiftly through the twisting corridors, her footsteps muffled against the cold stone floor. The labyrinth was no stranger to secrets, but this was a betrayal that cut deeper than any hidden passage. She found Jakub waiting in a dimly lit corridor, the flickering lantern casting long, distorted shadows. His rugged features were set in a grim mask, the usual alertness in his eyes now clouded with regret. Elena's voice was low but unwavering as she spoke. "Why, Jakub? After everything, why betray me?" Jakub's jaw tightened. "You don't understand what's at stake, Elena. Sometimes sacrifices have to be made for the greater good. I did what I thought was necessary to protect you and the mission." But Elena's heart hardened. "By feeding our enemies, by putting us all at risk. That's not protection. That's treason." The tension between them was palpable, the air thick with unspoken accusations and fractured loyalties. From a shadowed alcove, Sophia Lang watched silently, her intense eyes reflecting the flickering light and the turmoil unfolding before her. The betrayal deepened the already fragile trust among them, casting a pall over their alliance. Jakub's conflicted expression betrayed his internal struggle. But before Elena could demand answers, he turned abruptly and disappeared into the labyrinth's winding passages. The echo of his retreating footsteps left Elena standing alone, the sting of isolation cutting sharper than the cold stone beneath her feet. She made her way to a narrow opening overlooking the vast underground archives. The cavernous space stretched out beneath her, rows upon rows of ancient manuscripts and modern intelligence files bathed in ghostly shadows. Her breath formed small clouds in the chilly air as she contemplated the precarious path ahead. Jakub's betrayal was a devastating blow, but Elena's resolve hardened. The conspiracy was deeper and more dangerous than ever, and if she was to expose the truth, she would have to rely on her own wits and courage. The labyrinth was unforgiving, but so was she. As distant murmurs reverberated through the tunnels, Elena's sharp eyes caught the faint glimmer of a hidden passage she hadn't noticed before. A new lead, a new hope. With a steadying breath, she stepped forward into the unknown, ready to face whatever darkness awaited. The game of shadows had changed, and Elena Novak was determined to be the last light standing. The betrayal had shattered the fragile trust that had kept Elena grounded amid the labyrinth's twisting corridors and cryptic secrets. Yet, in that very fracture, she found a new source of strength. Alone but undeterred, she began piecing together the next stage of her perilous journey. The echo of footsteps and whispered threats, a constant reminder that in the shadows of Prague, no secret stayed buried forever. The cold air seeped through the cracks of the narrow corridor beneath Prague, chilling Elena Novak's skin despite the adrenaline surging through her veins. She moved cautiously, every footstep measured, her sharp eyes scanning the dimly lit stone walls of the labyrinth. The faint echo of dripping water and the distant hum of the city above were the only sounds in this underground maze. She clutched the encrypted manuscript tighter, its fragile pages the key to unraveling the conspiracy that had haunted her since her first discovery. But shadows moved faster than she anticipated. Without warning, a pair of strong hands gripped her arms from behind, muffling her startled gasp. She struggled fiercely, but the cold steel of handcuffs snapped around her wrists, biting into her skin. Panic surged, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had faced codes that seemed impenetrable. Now, her survival depended on decoding the dangers that surrounded her. Dragged swiftly through the twisting corridors, Elena's heart pounded in sync with the hurried footsteps of her captors. Her mind raced, calculating possible escape routes, memorizing every turn, every symbol etched faintly into the stone walls. They stopped before a heavy iron door, its surface pitted with rust but embossed with strange, ancient glyphs she recognized from her recent studies. The door groaned open, revealing a small chamber lined with damp stone. The faint scent of mold and earth filled the air. Her captors shoved her inside, then locked the door with a definitive clang that echoed like a death knell. Left alone, Elena slid down to the floor, breath visible in the frigid air. Mind already working through the constraints of her new prison. Minutes stretched into hours as she sat in the oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional drip of water from the ceiling and the distant rumble of footsteps fading away. She ran her fingers over the cold walls, tracing the symbols she had seen before, ancient signs that whispered secrets of the cult she sought to expose. Her heart ached with the weight of isolation, but beneath that ache was a flicker of determination ignited by the very challenge she faced. Suddenly, the heavy door creaked and opened, revealing Victor Krail. His imposing presence filled the chamber. The cold grey of his eyes seemed to pierce her very soul. He stepped inside, impeccably dressed despite the grim surroundings, a faint, almost mocking smile playing on his lips. "Elena Novak," he said smoothly, his voice low and controlled. "I admire your tenacity. Few have come this far. But you must understand the truth you chase threatens the delicate balance my organization protects." Elena met his gaze, refusing to show the tremor his presence elicited. "You don't own history, Victor. The world deserves to know what lies beneath the surface." His smile faded, replaced by an icy hardness. And yet, knowledge can be a weapon that destroys more than it builds. You'll learn that soon enough. With that, he turned and left, the door locking behind him with a finality that swallowed the light. Left alone once more, Elena's mind raced. She examined every inch of her cell, the irregularities in the lock, the faint draft hinting at hidden passages, the worn symbols that might be more than mere decoration. Her captors had underestimated her resolve. The labyrinth was her domain, and even here, beneath the weight of captivity, she found fragments of hope. Her thoughts flickered to Jacob Marek, loyal, pragmatic, and resourceful. Could he be planning her rescue, or had the labyrinth already swallowed him too? She pushed the doubt aside, focusing instead on the cipher embedded in her surroundings. The walls whispered secrets only she could unravel. Time blurred as she worked silently, deciphering the patterns and planning her escape. Every moment was a battle between despair and determination, a test of her mental fortitude. Outside, the labyrinth waited, a maze of shadows and danger. But Elena Novak was no ordinary prisoner. She was a cryptographer, a seeker of truth, and she would not surrender. The chamber's silence was broken by a faint scraping sound, the first sign of movement in what felt like an eternity. Elena's heart quickened. Was this a chance or a trap? Her journey was far from over. The labyrinth had more secrets yet to reveal, and so did she. As the door began to creak open once more, Elena straightened, steeling herself for whatever awaited beyond. The cold seeped through the thick stone walls of the chamber, a damp chill that clung to Elena Novak's skin like an unwelcome shroud. Her eyes, sharp and alert despite exhaustion, scanned the ancient inscriptions etched into the heavy iron lock that barred her freedom. Each symbol was a fragment of a cipher she had studied for months, the same cryptic language that had first drawn her into this labyrinthine nightmare beneath Prague. Now, that knowledge was her only key to escape. The muffled sounds of footsteps echoed faintly through the corridors beyond her cell. The guards were vigilant, but not infallible. Elena had learned their patterns, their shifts, and the subtle changes in their patrols. Time was a luxury she scarcely possessed, yet she worked with painstaking precision, her fingers tracing the worn symbols, aligning them with the cipher keys she memorized. A soft drip of water from the ancient pipes punctuated the silence, rhythmic and steady, a metronome counting down her chances. Her breathing was shallow but controlled, every inhale filled with the scent of damp stone and stale air. She felt the weight of the moment pressing down on her, a suffocating tension balanced precariously between hope and despair. Suddenly, a faint click resonated through the chamber. Elena's heart leaped. The lock had responded to her decoding, the ancient mechanism yielding to her understanding of the cipher embedded within. With cautious determination, she shifted the heavy door. It groaned on rusted hinges, revealing a narrow passageway shrouded in shadow. Stepping into the corridor, Elena's senses heightened. The labyrinth was a maze of twisting tunnels, each curve and crevice a potential trap. She moved silently, the soft scrape of her boots muffled against the cold stone floor. The air was thick with the scent of mold and earth, punctuated by the distant echoes of footsteps, a relentless reminder that time was running out. Her mind raced, recalling the maps she had memorized and the clues hidden in the manuscripts. The labyrinth was both guardian and prison, a living entity that fed on secrets and darkness. Every turn brought new dangers, but also new opportunities. Elena pressed on, driven by a fierce resolve that burned brighter than fear. As she rounded a corner, a sudden shadow darted ahead. Elena froze, heart pounding in her chest. The figures she had feared were closing in, operatives loyal to Victor Krail. Their presence a sinister echo of the conspiracy she sought to unravel. Yet, just as despair threatened to consume her, a familiar voice whispered from the darkness, "Elena, this way, quickly." Jakub Marek emerged from the shadows, his rugged features tense but resolute. Without hesitation, he grasped her arm, pulling her deeper into the labyrinth's hidden recesses. The scent of damp earth mingled with the faint metallic tang of danger as they moved swiftly, voices barely above whispers. "They're closing in faster than we thought," Jakub murmured, eyes scanning the passage ahead. "We don't have much time." Elena nodded, the weight of the moment settling heavily upon her. Her escape was only the beginning. The conspiracy's reach was vast, its shadows long. But now, armed with her knowledge and Jacob's support, she was ready to fight back. Together, they vanished into the darkness, the labyrinth swallowing their footsteps as the city above slept, unaware of the deadly game unfolding beneath its streets. The path ahead was perilous, but Elena's will was unbreakable. The truth was within reach, and she would risk everything to bring it to light. Yet, as the shadows deepened and the walls seemed to close in, a haunting question lingered in her mind. How many more secrets would be buried in darkness before the dawn could break? The labyrinth had tried to claim her, but Elena Novak was not yet defeated. Her escape was a spark, a beacon of defiance against the suffocating conspiracy that sought to silence her forever. The heavy iron door groaned shut with a finality that echoed deep within the labyrinth beneath Prague, sealing Elena Novak in the dimly lit chamber that smelled of damp stone and ancient secrets. Her breath came steady but measured, a practiced calm belying the storm of adrenaline coursing through her veins. Before her, the room stretched wide, its vaulted ceiling lost in shadows, illuminated only by a single flickering overhead light. At the center stood Victor Krallen, imposing figure whose presence seemed to command the very air around him. Victor's cold grey eyes met Elena's with a steady, unblinking gaze. He was impeccably dressed in a tailored dark suit that contrasted starkly with the rough-hewn stone walls. His posture regal yet relaxed, as though he were the master of this subterranean realm. The vast table beside him was cluttered with a bewildering array of ancient manuscripts, cryptic maps, and folders filled with modern intelligence, files tangible proof of the conspiracy that Elena had painstakingly uncovered. "Elena Novak," Victor began, his voice low and smooth, carrying an authority that brooked no interruption. "I've been expecting you." Elena's eyes narrowed, scanning the room for any hint of a trap. Her fingers curled instinctively around the worn leather strap of her satchel, inside which lay the decoded fragments of the cult's secrets. "Expecting me, or hoping to stop me?" she asked, her tone steady despite the tension knotting her stomach. A shadow of a smile flickered across Victor's lips. "Both, perhaps. You have shown remarkable tenacity, but you underestimate the forces you are meddling with. This is not merely a game of codes and secrets, it is the preservation of power, history, and order." Elena took a cautious step forward, the faint scrape of her boots against the stone floor loud in the silence. "Power maintained by lies and manipulation. You hide behind centuries-old rituals and bloodlines, but the truth will come to light. People deserve to know." Victor's gaze hardened. "Truth, like power, is a matter of perspective. The cult you seek to dismantle has endured because it adapts, because it understands the fragile balance between chaos and control. Without us, the world would descend into chaos." She felt the weight of his words pressing down, the centuries of history tangled in his resolve. Yet, beneath his cold exterior, Elena glimpsed a man torn between ideological loyalty and personal ambition, guardian of a legacy that demanded ruthless preservation. Suddenly, a faint echo drifted through the chamber, the distant sound of footsteps, steady and deliberate. Both Elena and Victor stiffened, awareness sharpening into alertness. The labyrinth beyond the chamber was no longer a silent tomb. It was a living maze, with enemies closing in. Elena's pulse quickened. "You won't win, Victor. The more you hide, the more desperate you become." Victor's eyes flickered with a hint of something almost like respect. "Perhaps, but desperation breeds cunning." As the footsteps grew nearer, the ideological battle gave way to a more primal urgency. Elena's mind raced, calculating her next move, weighing the risks of confrontation against the imperative to survive. Yet even in this moment of peril, her resolve crystallized. The truth was a weapon, and she would wield it no matter the cost. Their voices lowered, the exchange turning into a tense negotiation of wills. "Why do you truly fight for this?" Elena pressed, her voice softer now, searching beneath the layers of menace. Victor's gaze drifted toward the scattered manuscripts, because history is not written by chance, but by those who controlled the narrative. I am the custodian of that narrative. Without me and my ancestors, the world would forget its past and lose its way. Elena shook her head, her determination unwavering. The past should teach us, not bind us. Your legacy is a shackle, not a crown. The chamber seemed to hold its breath as their confrontation reached its zenith. Outside, the labyrinth's shadows lengthened, and the distant footsteps turned into a rhythm that matched the pounding of Elena's heart. The fate of the secret archives and, perhaps the future, hinged on the fragile balance between revelation and concealment. "Your fight is not over," Victor warned, stepping closer, his voice a cold promise. "But neither is mine." Elena's eyes blazed with defiance. "Then prepare yourself, because I will not stop." The chapter closed on the charged silence between them, a prelude to the storm that lay ahead. In the heart of the labyrinth, the mastermind had been revealed, and the battle for truth was only just beginning. The safe house was a cocoon of shadows. The city's distant hum, a fragile backdrop to the storm raging within Elena Novak's mind. The flickering screen cast eerie reflections across her determined face, her fingers trembling as they hovered above the keyboard. Around her, decrypted files and ancient manuscripts lay scattered, each a thread in the tangled web she was about to unravel publicly for the first time. Jacob's voice broke the heavy silence, low and urgent. "Elena, once this goes public, there's no turning back. They'll come for you, for all of us." His gaze was unwavering, a mixture of warning and loyalty. "You know what they're capable of." She nodded, swallowing the lump in her throat. "I know, but hiding it won't make it go away. The world deserves to know." Sophia's pale features were drawn tight, her intense eyes flickering with a mixture of fear and resolve. "My family, they're part of this darkness. I've lived with that burden my whole life, but maybe shining a light is the only way to break free." Her voice cracked but held steady, offering Elena an unexpected anchor. The door opened quietly, and Katerina stepped inside, her presence sharp and purposeful. She carried a recording device, an encrypted comms gear, symbols of a new battlefield. "I'm ready," she said. "When you are." Elena's heart pounded fiercely as she took a deep breath. The choice before her was stark: expose the conspiracy and risk everything, or bury the truth and live with the weight of silence. The night deepened, and with it, Elena's resolve grew. She began preparing the files for transmission, her mind racing through every possible outcome. The shadows outside seemed to close in, but inside, a spark of defiant hope ignited. This was more than a battle for truth. It was a fight for the soul of justice itself. As the first encrypted message was sent out into the digital ether, Elena glanced around at her small band of allies. Fear mingled with determination. The path ahead was perilous, but the choice was made. There was no turning back now. Outside, the city lights blinked silently, unaware of the tremors their secrets would soon unleash. And beneath the surface, hidden eyes watched, poised to strike. Elena's voice, once a whisper in the shadows, was about to become a raw one that could shake the foundations of power and force. the world to confront the hidden truths it had long ignored. The night held its breath, waiting. Elena sat back, her hands trembling slightly as the last file uploaded. Jacob's eyes never left her, his protective stance unyielding. Sophia wiped a stray tear from her cheek, the weight of her family's legacy now intertwined with their shared mission. Katerina leaned forward, fingers poised over the keyboard. This is it. The world will know. The room seemed to pulse with electricity, a fragile thread connecting courage and danger. Elena's mind flashed back to her mentor, to a promise made in silence years ago, to never let truth be buried. She whispered, more to herself than anyone else, no matter what comes next, we stand for the truth. The screen blinked, confirming the transmission. And in that moment, the conspiracy's long shadow began to unravel. Darkness would fall, but so too would light rise. The choice was made. The labyrinth's cold embrace released Elena Novak into the fading shadows of dawn, the sharp chill of Prague's morning air biting at her exposed skin. Her hands, still trembling from the harrowing escape, gripped the worn leather satchel, a precious vessel carrying the secrets that could shatter centuries of lies. Each breath she drew crystallized into fleeting puffs of mist, mingling with the distant hum of the awakening city. The labyrinth beneath had been a tomb for many secrets, but for Elena, it had become a crucible of truth and survival. As she stepped onto the cobblestone streets, the weight of what she carried pressed heavily on her mind. The manuscripts, brittle with age, and the digital drives, humming faintly with encrypted data, were more than mere artifacts. They were the key to unraveling a conspiracy that reached into the highest echelons of power. Yet, the cold light of dawn offered no comfort, only a stark reminder that the shadows she fled still stretched far beyond the labyrinth's walls. Back at the safe house, a nondescript apartment nestled within Prague's historic quarter, Jack, Marek, and Sophia Lang awaited her return. The room was dimly lit by a solitary lamp, its flickering glow casting elongated shadows that danced across the scattered papers and cryptic notes pinned to the walls. Jacob's rugged features were taut with fatigue and concern, while Sophia's pale face was etched with a mixture of fascination and dread. "You made it," Jacob's voice was low but steady, a rare softness breaking through his usual pragmatism. Elena nodded, her sharp eyes scanning the room before she allowed herself a moment to exhale. "We're not safe yet," she whispered, placing the satchel carefully on the table. "This evidence, it's more than we imagined. The cult's influence isn't just historically, it's alive, embedded within governments, institutions, even here in Prague." Sophia leaned forward, her intense gaze fixed on a faded manuscript. "These rituals, these codes, they're not relics. They're active protocols, a blueprint for manipulation." Jacob's cynical edge surfaced. "And now that we have this, we've painted a target on our backs." Elena's mind raced as she spread the documents across the table, the dim light revealing intricate symbols intertwined with modern intelligence reports. The web of deceit was vast threads, connecting medieval cults to contemporary political figures, shadowy alliances masked by layers of secrecy. Each revelation deepened the peril they faced. Hours slipped by as they worked, piecing together the sprawling puzzle. The tension in the room thickened with every decoded passage, every corroborated fact. Despite their combined expertise, the enormity of the conspiracy threatened to overwhelm them. Suddenly, the room plunged into darkness. The abrupt silence was shattered only by the muffled sound of footsteps approaching from the stairwell. Instinctively, Elena reached for a concealed handgun beneath the table, her heart pounding in her chest. Jacob motioned for silence, his eyes scanning the shadowed doorway. "They've found us." Sophia's breath caught, her fingers clutching a cryptic manuscript, as if it could shield her from the encroaching danger. Elena's mind snapped into focus. The fight was far from over. "We stick together," Elena commanded softly, the resolve in her voice steady despite the fear gnawing at her. "We protect this evidence at all costs. If they want to silence us, they'll have to go through me first." Outside, the city stirred, unaware of the deadly game unfolding in its heart. But Elena knew the conspiracy's reach was infinite, its shadows long and merciless. The battle for truth had only just begun, and in the labyrinth of secrets, every step forward was a step into the unknown. With a final glance at her allies, Elena steeled herself for the coming storm. The evidence was out of the labyrinth, but the war for revelation and survival was only escalating. The dawn had broken, but the darkness still clung tightly to Prague's veins, and Elena Novak was determined to be the light that would expose it. The labyrinth had tried to claim her, but she had emerged with the truth, and now the world would have to reckon with its shadows. The rain fell steadily outside the battered windows of the safe house nestled deep within Prague's labyrinthine backstreets. Inside, Elena Novak sat hunched over her laptop, the pale blue light illuminating the sharp angles of her face, casting deep shadows that mirrored the turmoil roiling within her mind. Each decrypted file, each fragment of the ancient cipher, had brought her closer to the truth, but also deeper into danger. She knew the walls were closing in. Jakub Marek leaned against the cracked brick wall outside, his breath fogging in the cold night air. His eyes scanned the dimly lit streets, alert for any sign of surveillance drones or the dreaded agents who had made Elena's life a relentless game of cat and mouse. "They're tightening the noose," he muttered, voice low and urgent as Elena joined him beneath the flickering street lamp. "We need to draw lines in the sand, decide who's truly with us and who's waiting to strike." Elena nodded grimly. "Every step forward risks everything," she whispered. "But if we don't act now, the conspiracy will silence us permanently." Inside, Sophia Lang's pale fingers trembled as she passed Elena a seemingly innocuous document, its margins filled with a hidden metacode she had painstakingly uncovered. This could be the key," Sophia said softly, her intense eyes betraying the weight of her discovery. "It's embedded in the past, but points directly to the present. The cult's influence runs deeper than we imagined. And now, so does the danger." Katerina Vasela's voice came steady and firm over the encrypted channel, her words a cryptic warning to the underground network that still believed in exposing the truth. "They're watching us. They're waiting for a misstep. But we will not be silenced. Not tonight, not ever." The group gathered once more in the cramped safe house, tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Elena laid out the plan, a coordinated release of the evidence, timed to maximize exposure while minimizing risk. But as they spoke, old wounds and mistrust surfaced. Jakub's shadowy past as an intelligence officer made Elena wary. Sophia's secret family ties to the cult complicated loyalties. Katerina's relentless pursuit of the story risked drawing unwanted attention. "We have to be smarter," Elena said, her voice steady but edged with exhaustion. "We can't afford fractures now. The enemy is sophisticated, ruthless. They'll exploit any weakness." Jakub's gaze hardened. "Then we watch each other's backs. No secrets, complete transparency." Sophia hesitated, then nodded. For the truth, Katerina's eyes burned with resolve. For the future, outside, the city's ancient stones whispered of secrets long buried beneath its streets. Inside, 4 figures stood at the crossroads of history and power, ready to challenge the shadows that sought to control them. But in this game of secrets and betrayal, trust was the rarest and most dangerous currency of all. As the night deepened, Elena stared at the encrypted files glowing on her screen. The lines of code blurring into a single question. Could they draw a line in the sand that would hold, or would it wash away under the tide of conspiracy? The answer would come soon enough. The cost would be far greater than any of them imagined. The safe house was silent, but for the steady tapping of keys and whispered strategizing. Elena's mind raced through possibilities, weighing risks with the precision of a cryptographer. Every ally was a potential threat, every shadow a possible assassin. She traced the Cipher's threads through history and power, seeing the cult's poisonous roots entwined with modern governments. Jacob's voice broke through the haze. We've got eyes on us. New players, highly trained. They're not just after you, they want the evidence. Sophia's revelation complicated the picture. My family's involvement, it's not just history. They're still active, and they know we're coming. Katerina's contacts warned of tightening media blackouts and increasing disappearances. The city itself seemed to hold its breath beneath the weight of unseen forces. Elena drew a breath, steadying herself. We go forward, but carefully. Each move calculated. Any misstep could be our last. The lines in the sand had been drawn. Now, it was time to stand firm. Outside, the rain eased into a quiet drizzle, the city lights shimmering on wet cobblestones. Elena looked out the window, feeling the heavy burden of truth pressing down on her shoulders. She was no longer just a cryptographer decoding ancient texts. She was a guardian of secrets that could topple empires or ignite revolutions. And the game was far from over. The night was waiting, and so was the darkness. The air in the small cafe was thick with the scent of strong coffee and stale smoke, a familiar refuge for those who preferred shadows to sunlight. Elena Novak sat stiffly, her fingers wrapped tightly around a chipped ceramic cup, eyes fixed on Jacob Marek across the table. He lounged with an ease she envied but didn't share, his rugged features shadowed beneath the brim of his worn leather jacket. Around them, muted conversations swirled like the fog creeping through the narrow streets outside. You're quiet, Jacob said, voice low but edged with teasing. Thought you'd have more to say after the last meeting. Elena's lips pressed into a thin line. Trust doesn't come easy when the enemy could be anyone. Jacob's gaze sharpened. You think I'm hiding something? She met his eyes steadily. I think we all have secrets now, but I need to know where you stand. The moment hung heavy. Jacob's jaw tensed. Then he nodded slowly. I'm with you, Elena. Always. But sometimes, the past doesn't stay buried. That admission unsettled her more than any denial could. The past was a labyrinth of shadows, and every secret it held was a potential dagger in her back. Later that evening, Elena found herself in Sophia Lang's cramped apartment, a sanctuary cluttered with ancient tomes, cryptic manuscripts, and the faint smell of old paper. Sophia's pale face was drawn tight with anxiety as she produced a faded photograph from a worn envelope, a black and white image of robed figures gathered around a fire, faces obscured but unmistakably linked to the cult Elena had spent months unraveling. This is my family, Sophia whispered, voice trembling. They were part of it. I didn't want to believe it, but Elena reached out, her hand steadying Sophia's. We all carry our histories, but that doesn't define who we are now. Sophia's eyes, fierce and haunted, met hers. I want to help, but it's a risk. We don't have the luxury of playing it safe anymore, Elena replied softly. Not when the stakes are this high. The fragile alliance between them deepened, but shadows of doubt lingered, threading tension through their partnership. One late night in the archives, Elena was alone amid the towering shelves of forgotten secrets. The chill of the stone walls seeped into her bones as she traced her fingers over brittle documents, the weight of history pressing down. A sudden creak echoed a soft but distinct sound in the cavernous space. Spinning around, heart-pounding, she found Katerina Vesela standing silently in the doorway, her presence both a surprise and a silent challenge. "I didn't mean to startle you," Katerina said, voice low and steady. "But we need to talk. There's more at risk now." Elena studied her carefully, questioning the journalist's sudden appearance in this hidden sanctum. "Why now?" "Because the story's bigger than either of us imagined," Katerina replied, "and the people behind it won't stop until we're silenced." The uneasy alliance was forged in whispered urgency, an acknowledgement that survival meant leaning on those you might otherwise distrust. As a violent storm unleashed its fury outside, Elena stood alone before a rain-speckled window, watching droplets race each other down the glass. Thunder rumbled like the turmoil within her soul. Her reflection stared back, sharp eyes shadowed with doubt and resolve. Who could she trust? Jacob, with his guarded past, Sophia, carrying the burden of her bloodline, Katerina, whose motives blurred between ally and opportunist. The labyrinth of deceit wrapped tighter around her, and every step forward was a gamble on faith and fear. She clenched her fists. The conspiracy might be closing in, but Elena Novak was far from defeated. She would face the shadows alone if she had to, but she would not let the truth die in silence. The battle lines were drawn, and the next move belonged to her. But in a world where friends could be foes and every secret was a weapon, one question remained: who would survive the reckoning? And as the storm raged on outside, Elena's mind raced, plotting, questioning, preparing for the inevitable confrontation that would decide not only her fate, but the fate of the city beneath the shadows. The night was far from over. The safe house was cloaked in near darkness, a single lamp flickering against the peeling paint of cracked plaster walls. Elena sat hunched over a cluttered wooden table, her sharp eyes scanning lines of decrypted text glowing on her laptop screen. Across from her, Katerina Vesela leaned in, her expression taut with concentration as she cross-referenced the documents Elena had painstakingly decoded. The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and old paper. The only sound a low hum from the computer's fan and the occasional scribble of Katerina's pen. "This is it," Katerina whispered, her voice barely above a breath. "Every link, every shadowy connection, it's all here. The cult's threads weaving through government corridors, hidden in plain sight." Elena nodded, her fingers hovering over the keyboard. "It's more than I ever imagined. The depth, the reach. It's terrifying. But if we don't expose this, no one will." Outside, Jacob Marek stood guard, his silhouette sharp against the faint glow of Prague's street lights, filtering through the curtained window. His eyes never rested, every creak and distant footstep setting his nerves on edge. The city's usual chorus of night sounds, the clatter of trams, the murmur of distant conversations felt alien here, intensified by the silence inside. "We can't afford a misstep," Jacob's voice cut through the tension as he entered the room, his presence a grounding force. "They're watching, Elena. The moment this hits the public, there'll be no turning back." Elena met his gaze, the flicker of fear shadowed by an unyielding resolve. "I know, but silence only protects them. We have to trust that the truth will outlast their power." Hours stretched as they compiled the dossier-encrypted files, historical records, decrypted correspondences, peace, a nail in the coffin of the conspiracy. Elena's hands trembled slightly as she uploaded the final encrypted package onto a secure server, the cursor blinking steadily as progress bars inched forward. The weight of what they were about to unleash pressed down on her like a physical force, her breath catching in her throat. Done, she exhaled, closing her eyes briefly as if to brace herself. Katerina's phone buzzed sharply, jolting the room from its fragile calm. She checked the screen, her eyes widening. The first outlets are picking it up, logs. Independent journalists. The story's going viral. Jacob moved to the window, peering out into the darkened street. They'll come for us now. We need to be ready. Elena rose, straightening her back. Let them come. The truth is out. No matter what happens next, this changes everything. The night deepened, Prague's ancient stones absorbing the first tremors of a political quake. Inside the safe house, amidst shadows and flickering lamplight, 3 figures prepared to face the storm they had unleashed, united by conviction, yet vulnerable to the dangers that lurked in every secret they had dared to reveal. As dawn threatened to break over the city, a new chapter in the battle for truth had begun, its outcome uncertain but its impact inevitable. Elena's heart pounded with a mixture of fear and hope. Her fight was far from over, but for the first time, the silence was broken. "We've lit the fuse," Katerina said quietly, her eyes reflecting the faint morning light. "Now, we wait." Outside, the city stirred, unaware that beneath its cobblestone streets and Gothic spires, a hidden war for power and secrets was raging, one that would test loyalty, courage, and the very meaning of trust itself. And in that fragile moment, as the first headlines splashed across screens worldwide, Elena knew one thing with absolute certainty: the conspiracy would not fade quietly into the night. The game had changed. The truth was out. And now, the shadows were coming for them all. The early morning light spilled over the rooftops of Prague, the city awakening beneath a pale dawn sky. Elena Novak stood silently on the ledge of an old building, the cold biting through her practical jacket, her breath visible in the crisp air. Below, the labyrinthian streets stretched out like veins, the shadows of centuries-old secrets casting long shapes against the waking world. For a moment, she allowed herself to simply observe the quiet beauty of the city she had grown up in, the place that now harbored dangers far beyond anything she had imagined. The weight of everything she had uncovered pressed heavily on her mind. The conspiracy, the betrayal, the lives ruined and lost. It all converged in her memory, like the intricate cipher she had spent months decoding. Yet, amidst the turmoil and fear, a singular thought emerged, clear and resolute. She could not turn back. The truth was a flame that once lit could not be extinguished. It was her burden to carry, her mission to see through. A soft chime from her phone broke her reverie. It was Jacob, she answered swiftly. "Jacob," she whispered, barely moving her lips. "We've got the files ready," he said, voice low but steady. "Safe house is secure for now, but they're closing in." Elena nodded, even though he could not see her. "I'm on my way." Minutes later, she found herself in the cramped, dimly lit room that served as their sanctuary. The hum of the laptop filled the silence as Jacob scrolled through encrypted documents, their faces lit by the soft glow of the screen. Outside, the city was alive, oblivious to the quiet war taking place beneath its surface. "They won't stop," Jacob murmured, eyes sharp, scanning each line. "But neither will we." Elena met his gaze, her own eyes hardening with determination. "We have to be smarter, faster." Their alliance, forged in trust and necessity, was their strongest weapon against the shadows that sought to consume them. Yet, the fragile trust was a constant battle, each moment laden with the possibility of betrayal. But in this moment, they were united, guardians of a truth too dangerous to ignore. Later that day, Elena met Katerina Vesela, in a quiet cafe tucked away in one of Prague's lesser-known quarters. Katerina's presence was a beacon of hope. The power of the press. The possibility that the world might finally learn what had been hidden for centuries. "Are you ready for this?" Katerina asked, her recorder poised, eyes steady despite the risk. Elena took a deep breath, the weight of the world balanced on her shoulders. "I have to be, for all those who suffered in silence, for every secret buried beneath these streets." The interview unfolded with a mixture of tension and resolve. Each word was a thread pulled from the tapestry of lies, each revelation a crack in the facade of power. The glow of the single lamp cast shadows on their faces, a metaphor for the fragile light they sought to shine in the darkness. As dusk settled, Elena returned to the archives beneath the city, her sanctuary and her prison. The maze of corridors echoed with silence, the cold stone walls bearing witness to centuries of secrets. She approached the secure case, the Cipher manuscript resting within. With trembling hands, she closed the lid and clicked the lock into place. The sound was soft but definitive, a promise to continue the fight, to protect the knowledge and wield it with care. Alone in the stillness, Elena allowed herself a moment of quiet reflection. The path ahead was perilous, the enemies formidable and unseen. But she was no longer the solitary academic who had first uncovered the cipher. She was a guardian, a beacon against the shadows. The dawn had come, and with it, a new beginning. The truth was out, and Elena Novak would face whatever storm followed with unyielding courage. But as the city lights flickered on across Prague, a faint shadow moved unseen, watching, waiting. The game was far from over. And so, beneath the ancient stones, the battle for truth continued. A silent war in the heart of a city that held more secrets than the world could imagine.